Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another exciting webinar from the Change Leader series Break Free. So, today we'll be looking at the topic Mastering Quality Assurance for Stress-Free Software Releases. My name is Geraldine, and I'll be your host for today. So, for those who may not be familiar with pCloudy, we are a cloud-based testing platform offering 5,000 plus real devices and browser combinations for mobile and web app testing. Key features of pCloudy include continuous testing, DevOps, advanced automation, AI-based visual testing, real-time test analytics, self-healing, accessibility testing, and much more. So with integration with popular testing frameworks and tools and round-the-clock premium support, pCloudy is trusted by 300K plus registered users right from small businesses to large enterprises. Next slide, please. So now about Break Free. So Break Free was an idea that burst out of the need for change in the testing domain. So we've seen the testing industry evolve and grow over the decades as a few leaders took the risk to break free from traditional approaches towards testing and come up with a lot of new ideas and practices. And we believe that this change can be accelerated at a much faster pace. So we took the liberty of identifying and inviting a few change leaders who are breaking the mold and embracing change to see the QA industry evolve. And that's what Break Free is all about. Our hope is that these sessions would spark ideas in each one of you to be the change in the QA industry for the industry to grow into greater leaps and bounds. So with that, let me welcome the change leader for today, Priyanka Helder.
Hi,
Priyanka.
Hello.
Next slide, please. So Priyanka has over 15 years of experience in quality engineering, having worked with big companies like Oscar Health, GoodRx, Sony, and Dell, among others. Currently, she's leading the quality engineering and DevOps team at Oscar Health. Priyanka, who was born in India, now resides in California, US, and is building her career implementing QA teams to use technologies like Kubernetes, visual validation, test stabilization pipelines, and CI/CD for each code deployment. She loves to tackle technical challenges with the help of modern technologies. And Priyanka has also won the World Bug Battle Championship 2014 and has also been a speaker at several major tech events. Outside of work, Priyanka enjoys traveling, trying out new food, and spending time with her daughters. So today, Priyanka is here with us today to share her knowledge with us. So without any further ado, let me hand it over to the speaker for today.
Thanks so much, Caroline, and I'm super excited to introduce my new talk this year regarding release management. So again, this talk was an idea as I was designing release management for a couple of my companies in the past, being Heal and GoodRx, where I started when the company was really small. And then we failed that we have to tame the chaos, right? And we have to have a controlled design process, how releases work. When we grow at a very hyper growth space, it's not possible to tap onto QA's shoulder and say, hey, test it, and we're going to go live tonight, right? And it becomes very painful for QA. So given that in mind, this talk will give you the pointers when you reach to that phase where like scalability is an issue and you need to adopt something. You need to educate your peers and you need to educate your higher ups what frameworks and what tooling and what different processes you need to make your releases more smoother, right? From chaos to control. So hopefully you all will like it. So let's get started with that. I want to start with a quote from our ex-Oscar CTO, Neetu. She said the most important, once again, I have this on my screen. The most important improvements are always feature facing. You need to also consider people cost and mandatory cost when you think about adding value, right? I very much resonate with this quote because lot of time companies only think about, okay, we have to be really polished when it's user facing, but like if you do not think about developer productivity, you do not think about your team engagement, like there are costs associated with it that going to affect the feature that are customer facing, right? So like release management is one aspect lot of small companies ignore, but at the end it becomes so huge that time making it a process becomes a huge deal. So I would encourage everybody who has joined our call today, encourage their peer to get more involved from the beginning, right? And make sure that they are educating their peers. So we gonna break this session into three sections, right? What are the various incidents? Why are they happening, and how can we solve them? So like people like us who are into testing, one thing we deal every day is incident. Incident is something that it's a bug that is already in production and that causes a lot of churn, right? During our day-to-day work. So we have to find out what, why, and how of incident before we go and design our release management process, right? So let's agree what release management means to your company, right? It could be a lot of things, and agreeing on a definition gonna definitely help you start designing it. So again, release management, do we have shared an understanding? Like a lot of time I have seen release management means various things to various people in the company, right? So it could mean improve the quality, efficiency, and speed of updating software. It could mean use specified techniques such as prioritization metrics, continuous delivery, automation, DevOps, agile development that provide structure necessary to plan and schedule, manage software development, right? It also has various components. So change management process is hugely associated with release management. Availability of test environments is hugely associated with release management. Branching and testing is hugely associated with release management, right? So again, like you have to define what it means, and you have to have that shared understanding, because if you define release management something and your peer or higher up define it something very differently, then it won't be a success, right? So best practices, let's talk about. So when we start thinking about release management process, we have to first starts with learning the best practices in this genre, right? What all needed to be there before you can make a release management design successful. So the first thing comes to my mind is automate what you can. Stop if not deployed in staging. So have a gate which will tell you that it's not ready to move it to production. Stop if unit test is not passing. Stop if test plan is not attached. So when you are again designing the release management, you have to make sure you have this stop gaps, right? So get this pointed and make sure you have this in place. These are prerequisite before you can go ahead and start designing. Minimize or eliminate downtime. So to minimize and eliminate downtime, you have to have more comprehensive testing. So go back and check, like, what is your level of testing? Do you guys do any release planning? Do you have enhanced monitoring when you take any change to production? Do you have ability to roll back, right? And establish a clear requirements and acceptance criteria. So these are very much needed and best practices and prerequisite before you start thinking about a more controlled release management design. So now let's deep dive into various issues that we face when we think about release management, right? So missing quality gate, again, like most of the companies that I have worked for, they had no maintained percentage for unit test. So most of the companies will say, oh, we have good amount of units, but what is good? Can you quantify it with a percentage number? I think industry standard says 80% or more unit test coverage or passing rate of unit test is the standard, right? Are you following that? Do you have your own methodologies to follow it? If not, start thinking about it. How are you going to enable your developer to maintain that? No defined way to test gRPC API functional. Again, like maybe we just have unit test layers. Nobody thinks about the different layer of testing. It's very important when you are in microservices. You need to test your API layers. You need to test your database layers. You need to test your functional layers. You need to test your non-functional layers, right? No guardrail test in staging before going to prod. I should say, like, there are like a lot of companies, when they're small, they don't even think about test environments at all. They just have their own local environment and they just push their code from their laptop. So whenever you are making making your product customer facing, and now you are a company who serves customer, you absolutely have to think about guardrails in staging before going to production. Think about test environment when you're small. Otherwise, again, it becomes like non-maintainable. The next current issues I want to discuss is communication. Again, communication is key for any company. You have to make sure that no upstream downstream communication is impacted, right? So you have to make sure that when you have microservices layer, everybody is talking to everyone. So just think about, like, if you have 50 microservices and there are maybe 25 teams handling two microservices together, if they do not have a mapping, like who impact whom upstream and downstream, it will be a madhouse, right? Like they might be doing their own continuous improvement, own continuous development, but they are not communicating to the team who are getting impacted, or who they are not communicating to them who is impacting that particular team, right? Then it will be impossible to design a release management process that will be successful. So creating that mapping and making sure the whole company understand that whole map, like which microservice talk to which microservices, who are upstream and downstream customers, is absolutely needed. No process to do collaborated integration tests. Again, once you understand the upstream downstream services, you have to figure out what kind of integration tests needed. Again, we all love unit testing, we all love functional testing, but they are inside their own world, right? Once you are done making sure that, okay, your feature works, your own island works, you have to connect to the others component and make sure that integrating with other component works. Because just think about the analogy of a car, right? We have 4 tires. All 4 tires make sure, okay, they are rotating, but when we put it in a car, they are not working together. How pathetic that can be, right? So like we have to integrate it together and make sure it is making the car progress, right? Non-existent automation test and end-to-end test. So again, a lot of companies does not think about automating their test or end-to-end test. They rely on only unit tests or manual or release testing. I would totally encourage, like as a part of communication, make sure that you are talking about automation tests. You are making sure your end-to-end tests are existing, and you are starting to think about it before you jump onto your release management process. Because ultimately, if you're looking at CI/CD pipelines, that will be your driver, right? That's the epitome of success that you want to reach. Like your automated tests are telling you you are ready to go to production or not. So next one will be deep diving on strategy about designing the release management process. So let's divide it into some short-term and long-term goals. So short-term goal where we want the expected return rate to be 20 to 30%. What that mean is, like, when you will be introducing the changes that I am outlining here, you will see the success rate of going to production with minimum incident will increase like 20 to 30%. So if you are seeing 100 incident a month, after you implement all these changes, you should see a reduction of 20 to 30. So that means your incident will go down to 70 to 80%, right? So first one is change logs. Prevent error by enhancing communication and dashboarding. A lot of time, again, in my experience, I have seen like the whole company has no communication what is being live, right? Like it's very hard to figure out like what is going live for team A being in a team B, right? There's no common dashboard. There is no communication that floats around. Maybe there is here and there Slack channels, but it's very hard to follow, right? It's not on our face to understand, or it's not easy to go back to and figure out, okay, on 24th May, what did we release? If we can make it a process, our life will be like a lot easier. So if something happens in production, we can go back and we can tie it to the change log that, okay, this has impacted by this change. What did we miss? Did we miss upstream, downstream communication? Did we miss integration testing? Did we miss test that was needed? Like then like debugging will be super easy. Jira priority. upfront leveling of high level impacted change, categorizing high, mid, low. Again, Jira, I took the liberty to just call out a tool, but Jira is a change management tool that most companies uses. There are other tool as well. So like feel free to replace it with a tool that you use. But again, training your team to categorize the changes with impacts will help you design your release management, because then you can treat them differently, right? We might not put a lot of effort. It's a low impact change because even if it's broken in production, doesn't matter. But for high and mid, you might want to design a very intricate release management. Jira field upfront documentation of monitoring before going live. Again, when we are small and we are few people companies, we don't think about monitoring, production monitoring at all. So make sure that your team is adopting to some sort of monitoring. There are various tools that gives you this options of observability, monitoring continuously for failures like 500 402s will give your teams lot of leverage to do a better release management, right? So just think about an example, like you took some changes live to production, immediately your monitoring detect something is going wrong, lot of 500s, it pages through some tool like PagerDuty, and you are able to roll back immediately, right? You don't want to wait on your customers to say, hey, you just released something today and my whole flow is broken. Jira and TMS integration. So again, TMS here is test management system. It's always going to give you a lot of benefit if you have a test management software. There is TestRail, there is Qmetry, right? You should have a unified way to attach your test cases to a change so that you know that what various kind of testing you have done, what is the coverage percentage. Again, it's going to give you a lot of benefits to make your changes solid. SonarQube, again, SonarQube is a tooling that gives you the coverage, like where your test coverage are, where it is lacking. It also support multiple languages. Highly encourage people to either build their own mapping or use some tools like SonarQube so that they know what their percentage is so that they can integrate it in their CI/CD pipelines. And then again, the observability tool, right? Like clean up your observability tools monthly. So if you have monitors who are just monitoring, who are just noises and does not give you a lot of inputs that are good for you, make sure that you have a process that you go back monthly and make sure that you go through the monitoring and see that which ones are actually helping and which ones are just noise. So disable them. Let's talk about some long-term goals. So the short-term ones will be very easy to implement, maybe 3 to 6 months, right? Long-term goals means like you have to work for a couple of quarters to bring this to life, right? So test tenant in production. Again, in lot of companies who are very microservices oriented, building a test environment is a nightmare for them, right? Like just think if we have only one test environment for your 500 microservices, who is pushing what? How do you make sure that when you are doing your testing in a lower environment, it's the environment which is very much resonating your production? So one thing that I learned from some of the big companies like Uber and others who are in this microservices world was creating the test tenant in production. So what they did was they have two different kind of tenancy, right? All the services are production, but they have two tenancy. One is like production tenancy, one is non-production tenancy. You could first test using non-production tenancy, and then you can launch it in production tenancy, right? So like that gives you the power of not maintaining multiple environment, but just switching the tenancy, you will be able to test exactly production replica. Continuous test pipeline, again, like automate your test as much as possible and then put it in a pipeline so that you can very well reap the benefit that is your change ready to go to production or not. Versioning, make sure that you do use versioning. So it's very important to give a version number to your each change so that like you can readily roll back or you can readily go forward when you are ready to go. But again, these gonna fetch you 20 to 30% ERR, expected return rate, but it's gonna take you time to get there and build it because these are complex changes to put in. So implementation time, right? So short term takes 2 to 3 months. As I told you, we can quickly implement the processes and track the prevention rate. Midterm, it takes 6 to 12 months. Can iteratively build environments, but would need 3 to 4 quarters. We need a lot of team involvement if you are a microservices world. Long term takes again more than 12 months, ideal solution, but need complete infrastructure overall planning, implementation, costing, right? So now let's talk about what should be our goal when we think about release management, right? Again, back to communication. You will hear me saying communication, 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 because communication is mother of all the problem. As I quoted down, like 60 to 80% of all incidents are a result of poor cross-team communication, lack of proper integration testing. Like it's amazing, right? Like if we could learn to communicate better, half of our problem or maybe most of our problem will be solved, right? So change management, weekly release planning. Lot of us practice agile, right? But we only think in terms of our own sprint, our own team, like how we can think about a more streamlined process of a release, right? Inside a agile process. So a release ticket type might be what we are missing in today's world, right? Like projection, what's going out coming week from each of those team, and putting it in a dashboard so that everybody in the company can take a look at, can solve a lot of this problem. So just think about a real scenario. I'm team A. I go to the release dashboard and I see, okay, team B, who is my upstream team, is releasing, let's say, a feature ABC. But I see I'm not ready to take that feature in. There needs to be some changes in my side as well for them to release that changes. Otherwise, my whole flow breaks, right? Looking at that projection, I immediately find that bug and I go and I communicate to them, hey, I think during requirement, you've forgotten that we are your downstream team. We need to do our integration testing to make sure that you have backward compatibility, or we need to also make it compatible with us by doing XYZ change. So do you see that we shifted the bug in to left, and the cost will be hugely saved, because if you'd have taken the change to production and then it would have broken, it would have caused customer dissatisfaction, it would have caused fire incident, and we had to do something like immediately with less testing and very stressful way of mitigating it, right? Tagging dependent teams. So once you have the release type and then once you have the upstream downstream mapping, team mapping, you can tag those dependent teams so that it's communicated very easily, right? Signing off contract testing, integration testing in Jira. So again, like make sure that you have integration of test management inside Jira, and you make sure that there is a sign off that happened on contract or integration testing before you take that ticket to life. Financial impact projection. Again, if your company works in the industry where the financial impact can be huge depending on the high impact changes, make sure you're outright projecting it as a part of your release management so that you're handling them in a proper way. Upfront monitoring, planning, and documentation. Make sure each change management change ticket has the monitoring documented, like how you will be monitoring it. Once we make it a process, it becomes a muscle memory, right? So now you are forced to think about, okay, when I take this change to production, not only I'm just taking it to production and saying, okay, it's done, I'm also monitoring it. So if something bad happened, I will be able to rectify it immediately. Jira dashboard to leadership. Again, tracking of BER versus ticket release is one of the tool that has helped me lot of companies. So I highly recommend that you use it. A unit test percentage logged in Jira. Again, if you log it in Jira, how much is the percentage that passing for unit test? It will be crystal clear for everyone in the team that do we need more functional testing? Do we need more integration testing? And again, you make sure you're using a test case management tool if you can, because ultimately when you become big and when the teams become very complicated, that helps you. It's not only helps you with the documentation, it also helps you as a knowledge source, right? So a lot of people going to leave the company, they're going to take their tribal knowledge with them, but if you have a test management tool, those tribal knowledge could be preserved using test management tool. The next goal should be environment, right? So we have to think about a lower environment, which a lot of companies misses, right? We need a staging environment, pre-prod environment, end-to-end testing, integration and contract testing. So enable pre-prod testing, right? Enable collaboration where multiple team getting impacted and need contract and integration testing. Build isolation from production. So don't have a hodgepodge environment where half of your connection is pointing to production and half has lower environment. Then there is a chances that during your testing you're going to impact production as well. So like making it completely isolated is very, very important. Build required tooling to use robustly. Example, add and erase accum value services. So this is a particular example that I have given, but like build required tooling. So if you are if you are testing a functionality which gonna impact the data, you have to make sure that you are building tooling to reset that testing data again and again in lower environment, right? Automation testing pipeline, again, every steps of your goal, automation testing should be your top goal on the list, right? Without that, release management won't be successful. Again, the third goal should be defining roles and responsibilities. A lot of times the companies, they know they want to reduce incident, they want to have a proper release management process, but they don't know who are the different key players in that whole process, right? So jotting down like who are the key players and who will do what gonna help you defining your release management process, right? For example, developers, they should write the unit test and achieve 90%. They should write API test and make sure that they agree with the P0 test cases that that is written, right? Performance, they should make sure they're using a tool like Locus to benchmark that they are continuously keeping the performance high. Functional, they should make sure they validate the happy path, because again, quality is a teamwork. It should not be only with QE, it should be a whole team process, right? So for QE or for product, what we can think about their role can be, they should be thinking about the bigger picture. They should be thinking about the mapping of upstream, downstream. They should be thinking about the edge cases, the cross browser testing, right? Manual automation tests, like augment developer, like if talk to developer and think beyond, right? So I think we are very good at that. And then again, benchmarking performance, making sure security and accessibility tests are performed wherever it's needed. I want to pause for a second and highlight pCloudy here, because pCloudy is a tool with support in almost all of this, right? They help us with cross-browser. They have 500 plus devices. They help us with native mobile testing. So I highly encourage you go and check their platform, and maybe that's something you should think about integrating with when you think about designing your release management. Product and EM. So EM is engineering manager. Acceptance testing. So after a developer and a QE or product manager does their own set of testing, it's important that we have a role where a release approver actually goes through the test results reporting and make sure, yes, the correct things are done in order, right? So again, a tidbit that I have added here, X percentage incident happens as a lack of definition and understanding who owns what testing. I have written here X because this numbers varies, right, in your company, but you will see if you provide this definition of various key members' role in your release management, half the battle is won. Testing best practices, our next goal should be making sure we jot down best practices of testing. If it is a front-end feature, unit test, functional test, cross-browser, performance, and security accessibility. If it is a API, either gRPC or HTTP, again, you can do unit test, API, make sure you're testing positive, negative edge cases. You are doing chain testing of integration, right? So only testing your own API is not enough. You have to make sure you are chaining with other API that consumes your API and making sure the integration test part. Make sure your API performance and securities are tested as well. And some other things that you should be, again, thinking about: DB migration, data feeds, data testing, infra changes, claims. It's very claims is something you can ignore. It's more on a like medical companies that deals with that. So my previous company, GoodRx, and my current company, Oscar, deals with it. But again, if you can think about is the highest priority feature, right? And ops config. Again, if you have a ops team who deals with very high priority configuration features, make sure that you make sure that the test coverage is to a standard, right? Before you standardize the release management. Again, 30% incident happens as a lack of understanding what kind of testing needed. Like lot of time due to lack of time or even understanding or knowledge, team just ignores the required testing that is needed. It will be your duty to educate your peers and higher up to make sure that the correct coverage is there. The fifth one is branching. So again, red, green, CANARY deployment. Branching, maintain 2 branches. So one of the very successful release strategy I had for Heal was maintaining two branches. We had a main branch and then we had a release branch. So everything that used to, like, first it was used to get developed in development branch. Then we used to push it to release branch. We used to cut a release at a certain date or time. We used to do the regression testing on that release. Once that is approved to go to production, we used to merge it to the main branch. And it worked beautifully. That was a microservices world as well. It worked beautifully for that company. So you can choose one of the branching strategy as there. Version application, again, versioning is very important so that you can roll back and roll forward. And also you can stamp it in your Jira ticket, right, to give a better clarity. CANARY deployment, deploy to one node to understand if the artifact hitting any infra roadblock. Again, if you have CANARY deployment and you use a lot of shards, you can choose to go partially live and observe that if there is any roadblock ahead. Once you feel that, okay, it's green, you can push it to the other shards and you make sure that, okay, the release is successful. 10 to 20% of the incident happen as lack of branching, infra-related issues, which need robust rollback, right? And this strategy gonna help you design a robust release management. So I think that's about it. These are the main key points I wanted to hit in this whole presentation. And happy to take questions. Very excited that I was able to present it to all of you, and I hope that I have enlightened your knowledge about how to design the release management in your own company. Do send me feedback on my Twitter handle. It's pretechmom. I'm also in LinkedIn, so do get connected with me. And I'm happy to chat about your process. Over to you, Geraldine.
Thank you, Priyanka, for a fantastic and informative presentation. So it's Q&A time now. Priyanka will answer some of the questions that were sent to us during the presentation. And audience, if you have any more questions, please ask away. So here's the first question for you, Priyanka. So what are some common mistakes or oversights you've seen teams make during their release management process, and how do you think that can be avoided?
Right. I think I cover that during my issue slide, right? So let's go back and check that out. So again, like I have divided into various categories. So if you go through my slides, again, I don't want to repeat it, but these are some of the things that are like very common, and I have seen repeated pattern that companies misses, right? So you need to deep dive and jot down your issues here. And like what I came across in my 15 plus years, I have jotted down here, and it could be different in your cases. So maybe think about like what missing quality gate you have in your company, what kind of different communication challenges you have, what kind of maturity level you have, right? So that's where is your answer lies, right? Once you jot down this, you're going to figure out that, okay, now I have the problems with me. I just have to map the solution to it, right? Like ad hoc releases, late night. If anybody has permission to take changes to production, right? Gonna make our life miserable. So when you streamline it, saying that, okay, our release timings are morning 9 to evening 5. Do not release afterwards without a release approval or without a certain date. Gonna help you with a mature release management process, right? One example.
Here's the next question to you. So given the rapid evolution of a lot of tech tools and platforms, so how do you stay updated with the latest trends in quality engineering and DevOps, and how do you integrate them in your work?
That's a great question, actually. I think I have couple of ways to learn about latest technologies. One is I have very specific feed that I follow in Twitter. It's hard to believe, but Twitter is a huge pool of knowledge, right? Like if you follow the right people, you can get the information super faster, right? So I do that. So any and every industry leader, I follow them. I continuously seek like what they are up to, what they are researching on. So I know like I have to do the same, right? The second thing I do is I go through a lot of this webinar and conferences. I not only speak to them, but I make sure I jot down all the latest technology talks that I need to learn and be top of my industry. And third thing is I also like to go through like some of the tools are available outside. So like blogs, yeah, and the newsletters that we get for a couple of very industry veterans. So like I go through them as and when I have time as well. So webinar, conferences, blogs, and Twitter. These are my way of getting myself up to date with the industry. I also read all the industry papers, like whenever there is like 2023 testing trends, how the industry is doing. I will make sure I'm the first one who read those, so I know where the trend is heading towards, right? A lot of time you will be hearing me talking about those. If I don't know where it's heading, I cannot talk about them. So yeah, those are the couple of things that I do.
Right, these are great ways to stay updated. Here's another question for you. So, as a quality engineering leader, how do you balance the need for speed in software releases with the equally important requirement for stability?
That's another very great question. Again, like educating, figuring out the issues, right? And then educating my peer and higher ups, like where we need to put our concentration on. Like everybody loves to like push their changes super fast, right? But depending on where you are in your company, if you are a small company with few thousands customer, or you're a large company with few million customers, right? Your impact is huge the way you do your testing. So like you have to make sure that first as a leader, you understand the impact, and then you highlight the issues along with the mitigation strategy to your higher up. So for example, if I see the issue is we are heavily dependent on release testing and there is very much lack of automation and unit testing is not cutting it, my recommendation will be, okay, next quarter we have to budget and we have to figure out our goals to make sure our automation levels are in a certain percentage before we can in a certain percentage, so that we can maintain the speed of releases along with the quality we deserve, right? And that's how I educate and communicate.
So here's another question for you. So what should be the approach for dealing with bugs found in production environment?
So I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but if the question is how do you handle incident, you should have a full incident management process, which is another topic, very large topic, right? Like how you detect those bugs, how you get paged, right? What are the teams that get involved when they get paged for that bug found in production to make sure what's the impact of that bug, how quickly you can get together RCA, which is the root cause analysis document, and then come to a conclusion how you will be resolving that. So again, like I was fortunate enough to implement incident management in various companies. Would love to have that in a separate webinar where I go over the whole approach, but usually having a methodical way of dealing, right? Again, how you monitor, how you get page, who all comes in, how they collaborate, how they figure out the root cause and impact and how they immediately fix it should be the way to go.
So, Priyanka, how do you foresee the future of release management with the ongoing advancements with AI and machine learning? So, do you think these technologies will significantly change the way we manage software releases?
Absolutely. Like, I am in love with generative AI. Like, it can help the way and the speed with speed, right? The way we write test cases. And I'm hoping in future, like, it gonna be at a maturity level where we as a tester can utilize a open AI, right? And just tell them this is my requirement, give me all, and like teach them, train them to give us various different kind of testing or test cases, and it gonna within seconds give us all the test cases we need. So definitely it gonna speed up our release management. Coming to tooling, I think for years we have tooling like Pleek which helping us with like cross browser and functional testing in a like lightning time, right? Saves a lot of time. Like I remember like in previous life, like we used to install all the browsers in our local. We used to have a like Dell laptop and a Mac laptop to do Safari and all, and you guys just solve it for us. Just go to a platform and test whatever we want to test it, parallelize it, do that, right? Like test inside a box and in a very time efficient manner. So I'm hoping with help of AI, like this gonna go another level where like we maybe with a modeling or something, we will be able to make sure that we have the right percentage covered. And like we do not have to put our own brain into that, and the AI gonna tell us, okay, this is your coverage, or these are the tests you need to run. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this AI evolution, and I totally see that it's going to be reality pretty soon.
Right. Yeah. Right then. So thank you, Priyanka, for answering those questions and for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us today. And thank you, everyone who attended today's webinar. And thank you for being an interactive bunch. And we hope you found the webinar to be valuable and informative. So remember, keep breaking free and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the QA industry. So see you at the next break free session. Have a great day ahead.